Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. I'm also glad I qualified a statement earlier this week that was going to be the last time I'd be mixing football and politics. I did say until next time. But a storm has blown through the country I didn't see. And Boris Johnson's Conservatives, who've been trying to wage culture wars to distract from their epic failures, starting to lose one. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So to get people up to speed really quickly, the Euros tournament this year was more than just about football for people in England. Even though the squad also made better progress than any other squad for 55 years. But they took a stand against bigotry. More specifically, they took a knee against racism. A number of players also showed support for LGBTQ plus rights, but it was the silent, dignified protest against racism begun by Kaepernick in the United States and driven by the Black Lives Matter movement that really upset Boris Johnson and his thugs. Football has had a problem with racism throughout Europe for decades. A serious problem. And I don't know if it's just because it's close to home for me, because so-called supporters in England also have a terrible history of hooliganism, the two seem to combine to make for very ugly scenes at times. This year, that culminated in quite a lot of degenerates paying a lot of money to attend a super spreader event, not to enjoy the very high quality football that the rest of us were treated to, but to boo them. They booed everyone. They booed the opposition team. They booed their own team when taking the knee. And what did the government do about this? Should have been a no-brainer. Even Conservative prime ministers of the past would have been comfortable disowning these degenerates. But not Boris Johnson. He has made a career out of appealing to the darker side of human nature, to the point where he has deliberately stoked fear and hatred to obtain his power. So he defended those who booed their own side. So did Priti Patel, the Home Secretary. Conservatives were writing articles or posting statements that suggested they even wanted England to lose because of this protest. We had a Conservative MP saying that he was boycotting the team. But England didn't lose. They beat the team that beat them in the World Cup semi-final. They progressed through the tournament. It looked like the team might actually go all the way. So then, like Homer Simpson when he realised that his previously underperforming team was winning again, Boris Johnson decided to become the biggest fan ever. He decked out Downing Street in a tawdry amount of flags of St George. He wore England shirts. He pretended to be watching the match, as if you would stand in front of a television with nothing but a table behind you for over 2 hours to watch a football match. In fact, I'll tell you what I found most distasteful. It's not that Boris Johnson expressed his fulsome support for the team, at least at some point. I'd expect any Prime Minister to do that for any British team at such a high-profile event. It's that of all the government, Boris Johnson and Priti Patel were attacking the England players and manager at the start of the tournament. It wasn't simply a case of defending those who were booing them, which is bad enough. They actively attacked the players. They said it's the players' fault, it's the manager's fault, it's the squad's fault that this is happening. And they were the same two ministers who were cheering the loudest towards the end. Like, other ministers largely said nothing as far as I could tell, either positive or negative. They were just keeping out of it. A more absurd a case of jumping on a bandwagon I have never seen. But this was a bandwagon that was quite hostile to them. I saw a brilliant post by someone who said that the government seemed to forget that the problem with starting culture wars is you can lose them. Now, I've already talked about the abuse that some of the England players received in the immediate wake of the final. But what happened after that was quite extraordinary. Marcus Rashford, one of those who'd been abused. And he was the guy who helped feed our starving children last year when the government wanted to refuse funding for it. He has a mural in Manchester where he plays. Racist graffiti was daubed all over it. Now, I couldn't tell you what it said. I suspect I wouldn't have been able to anyway. But I don't know, because never saw it. Because by the time I'd seen images, it was covered up. The local community was straight out posting up flags and messages of support for Rashford. The artist who produced the mural immediately repaired the damage. So what one racist wanted to use as a focal point for their attacks turned into an outpouring of what the majority really think. And that's the thing about acts like this. It forces people to pick a side. And that community in Manchester picked the side of the England players. And this is where Boris Johnson was both aware and made a huge tactical error. The reason he and Patel jumped on the bandwagon is because, like all populists, they want to tie themselves to those who are popular. If England had have crashed out, they'd have probably gotten away with it. But they suddenly realised that England winning can produce a feel-good factor in the country, and at the moment they were on the opposite side of that feel-good factor. They wanted to share in the benefits. The England team are popular in this country. I think they would be anyway, but at the end of the day, they've been in a World Cup semi-final and now a final of the Euros. That's the two biggest tournaments the team play in. But they're also personally popular as well. Johnson knew this, and that's why he tried to link himself with them. But what he failed to understand is that the team were taking a stance against him. Not him personally, but against people like him. Boris Johnson has been enabling racism in England for several years now. The England players aren't stupid, they know this. One of our players, Tyrone Mings, tweeted a response to the Home Secretary that she had stoked the fire at the start of the tournament and was then pretending to be disgusted at the thing they were campaigning against. Boris Johnson said he doesn't do gestures. He actually does nothing but gestures. Nothing but gestures. You know, he crashed like a truck through a polystyrene wall. He held up a pie. He held up a kipper, you know, to try and sell Brexit. Or he decked out Downing Street with flags to show his support for England. He didn't just say, oh yeah, I support England, and maybe, you know, the pin was fine, the St. George's pin. But no, he gestures is all he's got. The problem is he doesn't realise that others aren't like him. See, he thought taking the knee was a gesture. It's not. Those players mean it. They were sick of racist abuse, whether directed at them or their teammates. They weren't taking the knee to look good or appear concerned. They were doing it because they are concerned and want it to end. This is what Boris Johnson fundamentally doesn't understand. They weren't doing it as a PR exercise. And he can't grasp that because that's all he ever does. All he ever does is things for PR to make himself popular. Boris Johnson had invited the squad over to Downing Street. Quite normal, of course, for heads of government to invite over a successful sports team, you know, to, again, associate themselves with their popularity. And that's what this was, another attempt to associate himself with a popular team. He's cancelled it, though. Downing Street says this is so he can focus on his levelling up agenda. Of course he's cancelled it. He didn't fancy inviting a load of intelligent young men into Downing Street to ask him a lot of awkward questions about his own racist attitudes. He imagined they'd go along, it'd all be very pleasant, great photo opportunity. They'd be bowled over by the fact they'd been invited to Downing Street. They'd be very polite. No. Boris Johnson only invites compliant journalists into Downing Street over whom he has control. He has no interest in wasting all that effort only to be undone by some athletes. Where Johnson has made a huge mistake is in failing to recognise that the England team are popular, more popular than he is. But others do recognise this. Steve Baker, who's a prominent Conservative backbencher, a keen advocate of both Brexit and allowing the coronavirus to rip through our population, so not exactly one of the good sorts. He's written an article saying that his party must change its attitude to taking the knee. Baker said that this may be a decisive moment for his party. Now, you could take that in one of two ways. Either that he recognises his party have an opportunity to get on the winning side of this movement. There's still time. The World Cup's next year, so the squad will be in the limelight again. They'll also be playing in Qatar. I'm not too keen on that. I'm not sure how we'll do in the heat. But Qatar's not known for its human rights. You know, the team may do well again. They may not. But if they do, the Conservatives will be wanting to get a boost from their performance, not anger. Or he could have meant that the party risks becoming unpopular if they don't sort themselves out. Baker knows that his party is only in such a commanding position because of populism. It's not competence, they're incompetent. They're wrecking the economy, they're wrecking our healthcare system, they're wrecking education, they're wrecking law and order, everything. They're making a mess of. Populism is all they have. The problem with populism is it only works if you're popular. Boris Johnson attacked the most popular group of people in the country. He tried to backtrack, but it hasn't worked. Johnson is the only reason he is the party leader is because he provides them with a popular front that attracts votes. If he loses that capacity, there's nothing else that he offers them. He's a crap leader. He makes decisions too late, if at all. He never takes responsibility. He does nothing for them other than make them popular. If he loses that, they'd be better off with someone more competent, and they know it. The other culture battles were more carefully targeted. They attacked opposition parties, museums, universities, and so on. It was safe to do that because the people whose votes they are chasing don't have particular regard for them. But then he got cocky and thought he could take on the currently successful national team of our national sport. Bridge too far, I think. Some people are thinking this could be a turning point. Now, for Johnson, if not his party, I've seen too many false dawns to say that myself. It could be. And the Conservatives are very adept at arguing that black is white, so it also could not be. But we'll see. If Johnson can't stop himself being positioned in opposition to the England team, he could be in real trouble. And bear in mind, this wasn't a gesture from the England squad. They mean it. That's the issue. And what they're taking a stance against is what Boris Johnson has tried to stoke over the last few years. I'd expect him to try and throw out a load of honours for members of the squad later this year. He already gave Marcus Rashford an OBE last year after he defeated the government's anti-child policies. I mean, literally, it was the case of Marcus Rashford was awarded the OBE for defeating Boris Johnson. Imagine what he's going to have to do to try and appear to be on their side this time. Be Sir Marcus next, won't it? But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.